Well, hey, everybody, it is Lisa from Not That Hard. And we have been getting a lot of chatter on some of our Facebook groups about what makes an honors class. I've invited an expert to talk with us about it. Hey, Anna Knaub. Um,
Hello.
Anna has done public school and she's been an honors teacher. She's a homeschool teacher. She's taught online for so many years and she really gets the system. She's also a Pennsylvania state evaluator. And so she really understands Pennsylvania laws. I like referring to Pennsylvania laws because if you hit them, you're good everywhere else in the country for the most part. And so it's a good standard to hit. Um, okay, what do I mean by honors classes? We are talking about homeschooling high school,
Yep.
and the questions that we keep hearing from parents are, how do I either make an AP class, and maybe we'll touch on that briefly,
Yep.
but more importantly, how do I turn my homeschool curriculum into an honors class?
Yes.
So, Anna,
Yes.
what do you have to say about all of this? I know you have a lot of thoughts about it.
Yeah, for sure I do. So I'm in a very fortunate position. Like you said, I did teach in public school. I've also taught in private school. And I have taught everything from AP classes to life skills. And so I've seen the full spectrum. I also grew up in a home with a mom who also teaches learning support and all kinds of things. So hopefully I have good insight on this. And I'll actually start with AP because that's a really short, sweet, and easy one.
It
And
is.
the truth of that is AP is trademarked.
Yep.
And so AP is its own little bubble.
Yep.
You cannot just slap AP or advanced placement on a class
Yep.
because for AP to be considered AP, you actually have to go through a review process.
Yep.
And this goes for public school, private school.
Yeah.
It goes for, there are homeschool moms who have
Yep.
done this too.
Yeah.
Is you um, basically pick a topic that you would like to have be an AP class, and you completely flesh out a syllabus. And I mean, it's really detailed.
Yeah.
And you submit it for review, and then the AP board then approves it or not.
Right.
And then on top of it, your student can then take the AP test for
Mhm.
potential college credits.
Right.
And so, again, there are homeschool moms that have absolutely done that.
Yep.
In my experience, a lot of families just do dual enrollment.
Right, exactly. Because one of the problems or challenges with AP is even if you do get approved and your kid takes the class and then they
Yep.
take the test and they get enough of a score to be accepted by a college, that any particular college does not have to approve an AP course for college credit.
Right.
So unless you're for sure you've checked with the college and they're going to take that AP credit, it can be a lot of time and money because those tests are not inexpensive
Right.
to take the test, try to pass it, and possibly not even get the college credit for it. So, the difference, well, one of the things people like AP for is that you can weight your transcript at a
Yep.
higher weight. So, if you're at a 4.0 scale, you can weight an AP class for 4.5. And then that's why people end up with a 4.3 on a 4.0 scale for a GPA. So, there's that part. All right. So, that's AP.
Like
And
I said, that one was really short and sweet
yeah,
and easy. Like I said, a lot of homeschool families, if
yeah,
they want the college credit, their kid just takes a dual enrollment class.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that
Yeah,
kind of, again, from what I've seen, more often than not, that's almost easier than trying to
yeah.
go through the AP process. Very rarely do you see a homeschool parent submitting a class for AP review to get approved, just because, like
Exactly.
you said, it's a whole process.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, then you have that next level there is kind of honors, right? And that is, as you
Yeah.
said, the crux of what we're talking about here. In the state of Pennsylvania, a credit is considered a 120-hour course.
Mhm.
Okay. From what I have seen on all of the Facebook pages and generally speaking, for most states,
Mhm.
120 hours is pretty much the average to be considered a credit.
Right.
Whether you track every single nuanced hour or not, um, again, that is the average. Okay. When we're talking about honors, it's a little bit of combination between time, depth, and time, depth, and quantity
Like
and quality of,
rigor.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rigor. Yeah.
And so when we're looking at that time component, this is obviously a little bit judicial for your student. You might
Mhm.
have a slower reader. You might have a faster reader. You might have a slower writer or a faster writer, right?
Yeah.
So generally the aim is about 30 extra hours of work
Mhm.
or 15 extra hours a semester to get you to about 150 hours.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to be married to that. Your student's pace should be taken into consideration here.
Mhm.
It could take your kid 30 hours to read The Hobbit, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that that should be
Yeah.
an honors denotation on their
Mhm.
grade just because they take that long to read a book.
Right.
That second part there is the depth and the quality of the work.
Mhm.
I often see my kid reads so much more than I require to
Right.
them.
Right. Right.
So I'm going to give them honors for English.
Yeah.
Listen, I was a kid, if we were going by that, I'd have 4 English degrees at this point.
Yeah.
And I would have graduated high school with 17 English credits because I read well over 1,000 books in high school. I
Mhm.
honestly don't know how I functioned. I pulled so many all-nighters. My parents to this day are like, we don't know how you did it. Reading in and of itself is
Yeah.
not a problem.
Right.
And it's beautiful and reading for pleasure. Like you can't ask for anything more than having a kid that wants to read, right?
Right.
But there is a difference
Mhm.
between reading 100 books for pleasure and reading maybe 25 books
Mhm.
for academics and
Right.
for reading them and including things like literary criticism,
Mhm.
critical analysis,
Right.
character analysis,
Mhm.
understanding motivations of characters,
Mhm.
themes that the author was writing about.
Right.
You can read all day long.
Right.
You can summarize, you can
Mhm.
do narrations all day long.
Mhm.
But the key components here are that depth.
Right. Mhm.
Why, the
Mhm.
what, the
Mhm.
how. I'm teaching dystopian lit and comp this year, and we've been talking a lot about Winston, who's the main character, things like his mental state,
Mm.
right? And where does the mental snap happen? Or what
Mm.
is his motivation for, he gets a glass paperweight,
Mm.
which is useless in their society. They don't
Yeah.
need things
Right.
like that, but they're also very poor. So in his
Mhm.
poverty, he gets a glass paperweight.
Yeah.
Why?
Mhm.
Right? Where you could read over that 1,000 times
Mhm.
and it feels superfluous.
Right.
Um, Today we were actually talking about Winston describes his transformation in the party as salvation.
Mm.
Orwell could have said his healing was relief or it
Yeah.
was a freedom, right? Like there are so many words he could have used.
Right.
Used the word salvation.
Yeah. Right.
Why? Okay. These are uh, the surface level of
Mhm.
questions. Again, that literary analysis and that
Yeah.
criticism and that depth
Mhm.
that your student should be getting or you should be looking for. And we're talking about English specifically here,
Yeah.
obviously. Um, but the depth of things that your student should be extrapolating
Mhm.
from reading
Right.
to again get you towards that honors
Yeah.
note. It's more than just the amount of reading.
Right. I think just bringing in the term critical thinking might help here. They need to be critically thinking about the material. They might need to be thinking creatively about the material too, because you can create an honors component by it adding in creative projects to the kids. And
Yes.
you've done that really, really well in your lit classes. It's super fun to see. But I think adding that element of creativity where the kids have to really think around the piece of literature instead of just reading it and filling in a piece of paper or talking with you narration. I love that. I think it's really helpful in high
Yeah.
school. They need to be having those discussions, but
Yeah.
to take it to an honors level class, adding in a project where they really have to critically think about it and create something from their own head, or I mean, you can obviously give them an idea or whatever, but do you want to share some of the fun projects that you've had your kids do that might be like
Yeah.
idea starters for parents?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So something that I know I've talked about it in other interviews you and I have done that I'm really passionate about is making sure your students are doing well-rounded assignments, that they're not just doing essays, that they're not
Yeah.
just doing art.
Mhm.
I have my students all do essays, a creative assignment, a
Mhm.
presentation, and then there's some kind of summative formative assessment, either a unit test
Yeah.
or a few reading quizzes. Um, and that gives the students the opportunity who maybe struggle with writing, uh,
Mhm.
three other chances to do really, really well. Or if they struggle with presentations, but they're a really solid writer, it all kind of helps balance out there.
Right.
It also tends to make my classes unfailable. Fun fact. Um,
Mhm. Right.
yeah, but students also still have to work at the thing that they're not the strongest in. And
Right.
one of the blessings of homeschool is that you can always lean into what your students are so good at, right?
Right.
But I always, especially in high school, want to encourage parents to not be afraid to push their students into something that maybe they're not as strong at.
Right.
Maybe public speaking is hard for them.
Mhm.
Have them do a presentation for you and the dog.
Yeah.
Honestly, we're
Yeah.
getting ready to do in Shakespeare. They are getting ready to do presentations on literary devices
Mhm.
in Much Ado About Nothing, specifically
Mhm.
because I mean the battle of wits between Beatrice and
Yeah.
Benedict was so good. Like
Yeah.
there's so many literary devices that are just beautiful in that one. Um, for my dystopian apocalyptic lit class, they are getting ready to start writing their full stories in the spring here. And we do some really fun pre-planning writing assignments, everything from filling out a day planner for their main character,
Oh, fun.
describing a setting, and then taking what they described and showing it instead of saying it. So
Mhm.
you could say that it's really cold outside, right? That's a black and white.
Right.
But how do you tell me it's cold outside without saying it's cold outside,
Right. Yeah.
right? She stepped outside and uh, her puff of breath, stepped before her in her shadow, right?
Yeah.
Like you can give clues. The hair on her arm stood up,
Mhm.
um, and the change of temperature, something like
Yeah. Right.
and so we're again having them think outside of the box in a fun way.
Yep.
My creative assignments are some of my favorites that students turn in. I have some beautiful kids that do beautiful watercolors.
Wow.
Like, it blows me away every year the watercolors that these kids turn in. I'm like, honestly, it's
Wow. That is so cool.
incredible. Yeah. But again, they're showing me, and they often do that for setting.
Mhm.
And that is showing me, first of all, they're seeing those
Yeah.
non-direct cues like we were just talking about, right? You could tell me it's cold or you could show me it's cold.
Right.
And so by having them do something like draw me a setting from the book, they're showing me that they see all of that. They're
Mhm.
understanding the importance of setting,
Yeah.
and it gives them a creative muscle to flex.
Right. Right.
Um, so that is something that all of my classes do. To make that honors, I would have them maybe write an explanation for me. Why
Mm.
did you pick this? Why is the setting important to the story?
Mhm.
um, and how does this fit into the grand scope of things.
Right.
uh, the same thing with characterization. If I have them do a rendering of a character,
Mhm.
to make that honors, instead of doing like a paragraph description, I would say, hey, write me 3 to 5 paragraphs
Yeah.
on like a short character analysis
Yeah.
here.
Right. Right.
um, and
And
just
you would need,
expound.
yeah, you would need multiple of those kind of assignments to really add that extra 30 hours. Another thing you could do is have the kids read biographies of the authors of some of their favorite novels too, and just do a
Yep.
mini unit study on the author, or whatever. So those are really great ideas. Your classes are super creative. Um, Tell us why a parent would really want to make an honors class. Are they necessary? I can talk about college acceptance at this point for hours on end, but tell us what do you think on the East Coast? What are you seeing? How important is it for parents to really be concerned about making sure they have honors classes on their kids' transcripts? Is that really a thing? Do we need to worry about it?
Uh, yes and no. And so what I have always seen, everything from being a TA to doing homeschool evaluations in Pennsylvania, and working in those various levels over the years, is colleges would rather see your student do well in
Hmm.
a slightly not lower level class, but like in an academic or a normal level class,
Yeah.
than struggling in
Hmm.
an honors class.
Okay.
Okay. So if you turn in a transcript and your kid has a C or a D in an honors class,
Oh.
um, but another student may have identical grades otherwise, but an A or a B in an academic class,
Hmm.
that student with that A or B in an academic class is potentially and more likely going to get chosen over the student with a C or D in an honors class.
Right.
Um,
Well, can we pause for just a minute? For one, it affects the GPA, obviously, right? It
yep,
affects the GPA. But the other thing is, colleges and universities are looking for kids who can get in, start, and finish well. That is, they're
mhm,
looking for their overall class, the whole everybody they admit at once. They're looking for a nicely well-rounded incoming class, but they're looking for those individual students too. So
yep.
when I say finish well, like an A or a B, that would be a finish well. Although I just heard in some states you have to start your kid off at 50%. This is a whole nother thing. We could talk about that later.
Yes.
But I digress. But really, that's a concern for colleges because
Sure.
the retention rate is around 50% right now. They want kids to come into their program,
Yep.
finish their program, graduate, make great money, tell everybody about their alma mater, and be a benefactor of it. So, having those kind of grades on the transcript indicates that on some very small level to
Sure.
admissions departments. Okay. Yeah.
It also shows that you and your child understand their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
If your child is really strong in English as a whole, not just in writing, not just in reading, but in that critical thinking, in understanding themes, in understanding character development, and even literary criticism, if that is something that your child is already showing
Yeah.
skills in or is wanting more, right?
Hmm.
And that applies to any subject. If it is something your child already loves, and if
Hmm.
it's something that they're already pretty strong in, it's worth making it honors because
Right. Yeah.
they're going to be more excited about it. They're going to be more into it.
Yeah.
They're going to be more willing to do the quote unquote extra work,
Right.
because they're already so much more confident in it.
Mhm.
If you would have stuck me in an honors math class my 12th grade year, I would have been stabbing my eyeballs out and crying in the corner more than I already was.
Yeah.
But I was in 3 English classes my senior
Yeah.
year because I clearly had a niche, right?
Yeah. Right.
So doing the honors thing is supposed to be a support to your child. It's supposed to be a challenge
Hmm.
to them, because you also don't want to let them slacking off. You don't want it to be too easy. It's you always want to have the carrot just a little bit ahead so that they're reaching for it just a little bit, but like they're still getting nibbles, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so if the carrot feels too far ahead for your child
Yeah.
in the subject, you should not be doing honors in it.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's
and
okay. That's
and that's
okay.
okay. It
Yeah.
is perfectly okay because colleges and further education generally would rather see your child do well at the level they're supposed to be at
Mhm.
than drowning
Yeah.
doing something that they're just not there for
To
yet.
do. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's totally okay. So what you were referring to was the Goldilocks principle, where
Yes.
we want it to be not too easy, not too hard, one step beyond what's really comfortable for your kids, both in skill level or quantity, quality. all those kind of things, take them into account. And as your kids go through high school, remember the rigor should increase. Like that really should be a goal for you as you're homeschooling your kids through high school. And you don't want to increase it so much, like Anna said, that they just feel like overwhelmed by it and they can't keep up and
Right.
they just feel like they're an idiot. You don't want that. You want them to know that they can do it, but they have to work and reach and stretch a little bit, to get there. That's
Yeah.
just good, solid academic pedagogy. So, yeah. So honors classes are great for some kids, but they're not necessary. I was just thinking, like, I don't think I had any honors classes on my high school transcript, but I went through a typical course of study. So I did pre-calc and I did English 4, things that would now be considered probably honors classes,
Right.
or just more like the typical course of study if you were a college prep student. And so
Yeah.
you can definitely, I want to go back to one thing you said, something that your kids are really interested in, you can make it an honors class. So
Yeah.
if you have a kid who loves art, or is really into foreign languages, or really absolutely does love math or biology, you can come up with something to create an honors class for them if that's going to really motivate them and cause them to feel like they have permission to really dive deep into it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to just be English, although that's one of my faves too. So, but it can be any academic study or extracurricular study for your kids.
Yeah, and it's not, obviously I'm speaking typically from an English perspective here. But similar to what you said about reading biographies, for biology or science, it would be so easy to do a deep dive
Yeah,
into, hey, you know what? We're really into plant cells. We're going to take a left and do like an extra botany study.
yeah,
Hey, we're really into the kind of um, like tinkerers, inventors. We're going to do a
yes,
deep dive study into Tesla here. And so part of what often makes honors up, especially when we're talking about, I know it's a bad word, the school system here,
yeah. Well,
is also
it's there.
there is often an increased quantity of work here.
Right.
So for example, like my ninth grade year of English, right? Everybody read To Kill a Mockingbird,
Yeah.
everybody read Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
But instead of taking a month to do each of those things, we did like both of those in a month, right?
Yeah.
We're
Right.
honors kids, we read faster, we understand things a little bit better. That then gave
Hmm.
us the opportunity we read Othello. And in that year, we also wrote a 10-page research paper. The
Hmm.
quote unquote academic kids did not do those two components.
Yeah.
And so you may have, say we're talking about twins here, right? You have
Yeah.
two kids in the same class. How do you make one academic and one honors for the other, right?
Hmm. Right.
You may take 2 weeks talking about archetypes,
Yeah.
right? With your one student, and your other student is they understood it the first week, so they move
Hmm.
ahead, right?
Yeah.
And so by the end, you're going to have the second student who's maybe on the quote unquote honors track. They'll have done one or two extra assignments. They'll have maybe finished a week ahead of time.
Hmm.
And that then affords them the opportunity to, hey, you know what? I'm going to read an extra short story by this author. I'm
Hmm.
going to do an extra lab experiment here. I'm going to, um, you know, whatever it may be, that's a little extra.
Yeah.
Okay. Student A, who's quote unquote on the academic track, pretty much does all the same assignments. They do all the
Hmm.
same reading. They do all the
Yeah.
same study guides. It's just student B is writing 5 paragraphs instead of student A who wrote 3.
Hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
It can be as simple as, again, adding that little bit of extra quantity to
Hmm.
something. It maybe is going to take them a few minutes extra because it is going to be a little longer.
Yeah.
And the depth requirement might be there a little differently.
Yeah.
When I have writing rubrics for honors writing versus academic writing,
Hmm.
um, a 5 for academic writing might be 5 or less errors, right? Like that's
Hmm.
like an error a
Yeah.
paragraph. That's not
Yeah.
too bad. For my honors, it might be more like you can have 3 convention errors.
Hmm. Yeah.
It you're tightening up the expectations there. The
Yeah.
expectations are a little higher. Um, obviously perfection is never like expected.
Yeah.
But again, we're closing in
Mhm.
the gap, so to speak, a little bit and saying, hey, you know what? If you want to do academic, that's fine. You have 5 errors that you can make.
Yeah.
Still
And
to still get a 5.
and
Um,
that really requires the student to do some self-editing, which is, I mean, this is really where we want to get our kids so that they're taking ownership for their own learning and they're realizing that, throughout life I need to be doing my own editing.
yes, yes.
Hopefully
And
there's
I
editors
always
for
give
you.
kids edit sheets too. So I'm like, y'all have no excuse if you did the
Right,
edit.
exactly. So, and actually, I actually had a student, his mom was a biologist. Parents, you are your kid's best resource. I say this all the time.
Yep.
His mom was a biologist and he did honors biology. And he actually crafted a new breed of tomatoes through this honors class that he did. He got
Yeah.
it trademarked and he was offered
Nice.
a full ride to like Georgia Tech as a sophomore.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you have a kid and you have the resources who's really interested in it, like don't do the project for themselves because they're going to get to college and have to do it on their own. But if you have you have the wherewithal to do it, go for it because you just never know how it might just open up different opportunities for your kids too.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the honors thing is like it's not expected. I know so many kids in public school right now, they're doing like 12 AP classes and 3 honors. And literally, I'm like, how are they literally doing that? Like just time wise, it doesn't make sense time wise. I think there's a lot of cheating that happens. There's so much pressure on these kids. They just cannot keep up with the pressure. And here's the deal, your kids can get into college, and there's always a back door. If they don't get in the front door the first time, there's always different ways to get in. You don't have to do honors, you don't have to do AP. It's an opportunity and an option, and it's a good one. But you
Yeah.
want to weigh out like, is it going to be beneficial to your student, or is it going to just be like a hardship on them? And
Right.
not a helpful hardship.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Don't stress yourself out thinking that you have to do, 300 hours of work in a
yeah,
year. Right? Don't
yeah.
stress yourself out thinking that you have to, just include all of this crazy curriculum and do,
Mhm.
hundreds and hundreds of extra things, right?
Yeah.
It's again, it can be very nuanced. Like I just said, it's doing
Yeah.
5 paragraphs instead of 3. It is, hey, you can have 3 grammatical errors instead of 5.
Mhm.
It is, you know what? Instead of reading 3 books this semester, I want you to read 4.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you're not just giving me a narration on them. I
Mhm.
want you to give me an actual analysis. I want you to write an essay on themes. I want you to write an essay on characterization.
Yeah.
I want you to do a presentation for me and the dog about historical context.
Yeah.
Um,
Or
again, we're
or
looking.
shoot a YouTube video and have them posted on a private
Yeah,
YouTube. Like
yeah,
you can do
absolutely.
presentations not for mom and the dog if you want to have them feel like it's a little bit more, like professional or it's not just mom.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And it can be very simplified, but
Yes.
again, still meeting those benchmarks.
Right.
You're hitting that it's more time than 120 hours.
Yeah.
You're hitting that depth and quality of work. You're
Yeah.
looking at higher quality and it's a little deeper than just that surface level black and white for
Yeah.
whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And you're working at, again, you're going to have a higher quantity of stuff and there's
Yeah.
going to be more stuff done,
Hmm.
which then by default also then gives you that time too. Like
Right.
they all intermingle and go hand in hand. You can't
Yeah.
just say 30 hours of work
Yeah.
without having more work. Like
Right.
it doesn't work that way. And you
Yeah.
can't ask for more depth or a higher quality
Hmm.
without it also potentially taking more time. So it's actually very easy to hit all 3 of those points
Yeah.
because you kind of basically can't do one without the other ones.
Hmm. Yeah.
But generally speaking, especially out of Pennsylvania, like I said, most states this applies to. It's 120 hours for a regular credit.
Yeah.
You're looking at somewhere about 30 additional hours for 150 for honors. And then you're looking at that additional work having
Hmm.
a depth and quality to it
Yeah.
that is higher than what you would consider, quote unquote, your average bear,
Hmm.
which then in turn is going to give you
Hmm.
more products in general.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So it's really that easy.
Yeah, it really
It's
is. I
really
feel
that
like it
easy.
scares people so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Anna, thank you so much. You guys were at Not That Hard to Homeschool, and we believe that you, as a homeschool parent, can competently, confidently, and even contentedly homeschool your kids. We hope this episode has been super helpful to you. If you have any questions for Anna about honors classes, or AP or Pennsylvania evaluations, leave a comment below. And Anna does teach at True North Homeschool Academy, Dystopian Lit, Shakespeare. I always forget the third one.
Written survey is what's coming next year. Yes,
Brilliant survey. She has a lot of fun in her classes. So let us know if you want information about that. And until next time, everybody, Anna, thanks for joining us. We will
absolutely. Thank
talk
you.
to you guys soon. Thanks, everybody.